Hi, from CrossFire Church in West Union, Iowa. I hope you're having a great day. Today I'd like to visit with you from the book of Exodus in the Old Testament. Exodus means a way out. About 400 years before this part of the story, there were 70 people in Jacob's family that left their homeland in Israel, in the land of Canaan, for Egypt. Egypt had plenty of food, but there was a famine in Israel. At the time of this part of the story, God's people, now remember it's 400 years later, God's people had been slaves in Egypt a long time. And they have a belief in God. God is the creator, the God that loves us. But here we have Pharaoh, who is the king, the ruler of Egypt, calling himself God. That's how they looked to their Pharaoh, as God. And he's ruler over a vast domain. Egypt has conquered much land, many other peoples around them. So here we find the lives of so many of God's people, and they are slaves, forced into labor. People make themselves out to be supreme beings in the universe. That's nothing new. So many want you and I to believe that mankind is somehow God and that we have all our destiny in mind, and they don't foster a belief in God, who is real. They put all the faith in themselves. God's people in this story have been crying out to be delivered from their present adversity. They're not free to do what they wanted to do because they were slaves. They wanted things better. You ever heard that before? They wanted things better. Now God has heard the cries of his people and has sent a man named Moses to Egypt to take his people out of that land. Now I want to remind you, even if you know the story of Moses, he was reluctant to do what God told him to do. You might think that's an odd thing, because who would ever want to do something different? Who wouldn't want to do what God wanted them to do? Of course we'd want to do that, right? Well, excuses Moses came up with. God had a plan and did away with the excuses. God made it clear that he'd enable Moses to do what he wanted him to accomplish. And Moses finally gave in. Now, Moses approached Pharaoh, remember the king of the land, the ruler, telling him to let God's people go. After repeated attempts and warnings, Pharaoh kept saying no until things really went bad for Egypt. Pharaoh did not listen until an angel of death came to Egypt, killing the firstborn son in every household. Pharaoh had to see death knocking on the door before he would give in and put God first. I want to encourage you to read the book of Exodus. It's a great story. Being convinced by an angel of death, finally Pharaoh told Moses to go and take his people with him. Now I want to read from Exodus 12, beginning in the 30th verse. Pharaoh and all his officials and all the people of Egypt woke up during the night, and loud wailing was heard throughout the land of Egypt. There was not a single house where someone had not died. Pharaoh sent for Moses and Aaron during the night. "Get out," he ordered. "Leave my people and take the rest of the Israelites with you. Go and worship the Lord as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds as you said, and be gone. Go, but bless me as you leave." All the Egyptians urged the people of Israel to get out of the land as quickly as possible, for they thought, "We will all die." The Israelites took their bread dough before yeast was added. They wrapped their kneading boards in their cloaks and carried them on their shoulders. And the people of Israel did as Moses had instructed. They asked the Egyptians for clothing and articles of silver and gold. The Lord caused the Egyptians to look favorably on the Israelites, and they gave the Israelites whatever they asked for, so they stripped the Egyptians of their wealth. That night, the people of Israel left Ramses and started for Succoth. There were about 600,000 men. We figure around 2 million people all told, plus all the women and children. A rabble, now listen to this. This is the key verse here. A rabble of non-Israelites went with them, along with great flocks and herds of livestock. For bread, they baked flat cakes from the dough without yeast they had brought from Egypt. It was made without yeast because the people were driven out of Egypt in such a hurry that they had no time to prepare the bread or other food. Now, a rabble of non-Israelites went with them. Different versions of the Bible go back to the old language and put their version in. One says, ethnically diverse crowd. Another, a mixed multitude. Another, people of various sorts. And literally, in the old language, it's a mixed multitude. So, here again, many other people went with them as well. And there was also sheep, goats, and cattle. The International Children's Bible says many other people who were not Israelites went with them, making it very clear. Today, year 2020, we're dealing with something not known before, unless you're old enough to remember 1918. A flu epidemic took many people around the globe at that time, 1918. And maybe today you feel like yelling, stop! Somebody stop the world. I want to get off. So many things we put onto our schedules, and we've made ourselves a very busy way of life. And our churches have, in many ways, followed the culture. Busy calendars and programs, meetings, services that never seem to actually deliver spiritual needs of people even. Until it all stopped several weeks ago. No church, no NBA, no MLB, NHL, no malls, movies, gatherings over 10 people, no. No weddings and no funerals. And did I say no church service? And now here we are. Not much going on. Time at home. No going out to eat. Shopping or going to the movies. No traveling or leaving home unless absolutely necessary. Yeah, it's the dark ages with internet and smartphones. Now, during this difficult time in the world, our First Lady Melania Trump recorded a special message for America's children, many of whom are separated from school, friends, and extended families right now. She says, I encourage you to read books, continue to learn, help with chores, and share some laughter with your family. That's what she said. I think that's a smart thing. That's what we should all be about, not just children. Here we are in this stay-at-home time. Now we have an opportunity to change things for the better, to spend time on what really matters, and experience what is most important in our life. This is a time when we can pray and bring ourselves into a deeper relationship with God, to read the stories, the actual events that took place throughout thousands of years. The love story is written by God himself for his people. Read Exodus. If you'd do that, it'd be a great story. Read Exodus, and then read the New Testament scriptures. If you're feeling a little cramped and up and staying inside, and it's too much during the coronavirus, you want something to do, what my wife and I did, we rented and watched the 10 Commandments. Cecil B. DeMille's, middle of the last century somewhere, made an epic movie, claimed to be one of the 10 best movies done in the world. if I remember correctly. But it's a great story, and it's following pretty much the true story that we have through the Old Testament. So I'd encourage you to do that. Be a good thing. Now, when time is called, and we're able to re-engage with one another in public services, let's not be too hasty and too quick to put it all back together identical to the same way it was before COVID-19. Think back, when God's people were called to leave Egypt, they were called to do things different, to help each other. Many people are out there wanting things better today. We're to help our neighbors. Call your neighbors and acquaintances. Make calls and ask the people, how can I pray for you? And then be ready to listen. And then take them into prayer. Pray for them. People were called into service in the Old Testament times. Be called to do things that might be a little out of their comfort zones, like Moses. A lot of people have heard about Moses. What a great leader. But remember, he started out with excuses. And whether you laugh or cry, the wind keeps on blowing. This is a reset. Right now, we're learning how to be the church. And that church is not something we attend, but it's who we are. The church exists apart from buildings and land and programs. Empowered by the living Spirit of Christ, we are the church. Untethered to buildings or schedules, we do what we are, love one another. We are a people who are called to love like Jesus. He tells us something else, too. Not only to love one another, but he says to us, go make disciples. And it's not in there just if you feel like it. Now, what about you? Last week I mentioned spring cleaning. Perhaps this is a chance to clean out the shelves and the cabinets and closets and maybe downsize. Please don't insist that it all goes back to exactly the way it was before. Don't waste this opportunity to show what God's church is. Soon, the ban will be lifted, and we'll once again have public services, when I sure urge you to be in attendance. There'll be Bible studies, youth programs, kids' church, all kinds of things in all kinds of churches. Let's not put that all back the way it was. Now's our chance. We have a moment. We have an opportunity here. We can recognize, we can reorganize, re-strategize, and realign according to what matters most, like people, time, caring for people, caring for others, relationships, heartfelt worship of the Lord our God, loving service, and community connections. This will take God's people working together in unity. Our church services are at a drive-in service. We've been teaming up with Redeemer Lutheran. Drive-in service. 2 pastors giving short messages. But this will take God's people working together. Let's use the stay-at-home time to prepare our hearts and minds and be delivered from captivity just as God would want. There is power and might in knowing God through his Son, Jesus Christ, so we can have confidence in calling up our brothers and sisters in their homes. Don't ever think that salvation is only for the churchgoers, but it is to take many with us. For God says that no one be lost. We are called to be the hands and feet of Jesus. Go in peace. and serve the Lord.